right, good afternoon, everyone. We will begin the November 15th, 2023 Taxicab Advisory Committee meeting and begin with the roll call. Clerk?
Shawnilo Rivera,
Present.
Abel Seifu. If you guys could go ahead and unmute your mics, just so I can.
Okay,
you.
present.
Thank you so much. Augustine Hodoyan. Alfred Banks.
Here.
Akbar Majid.
Here.
Antonio Hueso. David Taysom.
Here.
George Abraham.
Here.
Karen Igareda. Daryl Mayakawa. Michael Anderson.
Here.
Margot Tangway. Michael Trimble. Peter Zishi.
Here.
Zidu Girma.
Here.
Jonathan Garcia.
Here.
Jessica Marty. Here. So we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, with that, we'll move to agenda item 2, approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the July 12th, 2023 minutes?
So moved.
We got a motion from Mr. Kerma. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Margot. Thank you. All right, we got a motion. We have a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, hearing no opposition, that passes unanimously, and we'll move to agenda item 3, non-agenda public comment.
There's no public comment.
No. All right, we have no non-agenda public comment. So let's move to agenda item number 4.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Agenda number 4 is the 2024 fee schedule, which we calculate every year. We calculate the fee schedule depending on consistent of full cost recovery mandated by Public Utilities Code. We calculate the fee schedule to recover MTS's expenses for the administration and enforcement of our department and our duties. This involves an annual review of the expenses and revenue of the previous fiscal year associated with all our activities, which include our salaries, vehicle leases and maintenance, radios and administrative overhead. We're glad to report that once again, as of last year, our department ended up with favorable revenues over expenses. In 2024, the MTS Finance Department will be providing this committee with an overview of the fiscal year 2023 budget results and an updated budget forecast for the fiscal year 2024 budget that usually happens at the first Taxicab Advisory Committee meeting of the year. It is MTS's aim to keep our regulatory fees relatively consistent without large swings to assist the for-hire vehicle industry in planning for their operation and cost. That being said, the regulatory fees for the next year are the same as for 2023. For taxicabs, jitneys, and low-speed vehicles, they will be $350 per vehicle. And for non-emergency medical and charters, it will be $440 per vehicle. Again, the same amounts as of last year or the current year, I should say. We will in the invoices for all those companies for each of those vehicles will be emailed around January 4th. Email is our primary method of communication. So we advise every member and every company out there to keep an eye on the emails on file for the invoices. The deadline for the payment, again, is 60 days. And the deadline for the payment, it would be March 4th of 2024. We do have a late renewal opportunity for those permit holders that are not able to meet that deadline to submit the regulatory fee by the end of that same month, which is March 31st. Along with a $100 late renewal fee. And unless that is submitted, then the permit would be voided. So for instance, it would be $350 for one cab, which is the regular fee. After March 4th, that the entire amount that needs to be submitted in order to keep that permit would be 350 plus 100 for a total of 450. Other changes to the fee schedule. We included fee waivers for taxi cab wheelchair accessible vehicles. Those fee waivers must be in accordance with our taxi cab wheelchair accessible policy fee waiver guidelines, which are pending, and once finalized in the following days, will be posted on our website and will be sent directly to all permit holders and all taxi cab permit holders on file. That way there's time for them to review it and to contact our office for any questions. Another change to the fee schedule was our reflective decals, which allow law enforcement and the public to identify the vehicles as a regulated vehicle. The material product of those stickers went up, so we adjusted the price to $10 each. Each taxi cab requires 2 stickers, 1 on each side, to meet our guidelines. And we also added a $35 return payment fee for all those payments that are submitted through a personal check, but end up being rejected by the bank for lack of funds. So that fee is intended to cover the labor cost to adjusting those fees once we receive them again. Those are the only changes to the fee schedule. And that being said, I'm open to any questions on that item, Chair.
Thank you, Lenny. All right, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comments.
Okay, with that, we will turn to the committee to see if there's any questions or comments. Just as a reminder, before we begin that, this is an information item, no motion required here. We'll start with Mr. Kaysen and then Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Well, what, you originally said it's $10, it was before $10. Did it go up another $10 or is it gonna be $20 now?
No, it used to be $5 each for each. So we require, like I mentioned, 2 stickers.
Right,
So like you mentioned, it was $10 for both stickers because the price was 5. So we did detail that in the fee schedule. The price essentially doubled. So now it's $10 each for each stickers. And again,
oh, $20.
correct, total. I mean, for taxi cabs that are coming in into business, they require new markings, or taxi cabs that for some reason they lost their stickers, they would peel off. That usually does not happen, but that is the price of the sticker. Sure.
All right, Mr. Anderson?
I have no objection of the fee, so it looks good.
Mr. Wayson?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I went to you all because your mic's were on. Okay, simple, easy enough. Lenny, looks like we are all good. Don't see any additional questions or comments on this item. So let's move to item number 5. Lenny?
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 5 has to do with the proposed ordinance number 11 revisions. This is a lengthy item. I invite the committee, if there's any questions, obviously, at the chair's discretion, we can answer them. It's a lengthy item. You're more than welcome to read it after the meeting and call us for any clarification or questions. And the item has to do with the revisions. MTS conducts revisions to the ordinance at least once a year, or depending on any matters that this committee brings up. And the matter that has been under discussion for the last year is the taxi cab and TNC partnerships. And we've held a couple of other meetings afterwards. I'll detail that, but as a background, the revisions have to do with Uber Technologies, which is a transportation network company, TNC, announcing a partnership with Yellow Cab last September. In essence, this partnership consists on allowing taxi cabs to provide prearranged trips to Uber customers that book those trips through the Uber app. The Uber customer agrees to an upfront fare based on the TNC dynamic pricing, not on the maximum rates of fare for taxi cabs. The trip request is then connected to a taxi in this case, because the partnership is with Yellow, the trip request is then connected to the Yellow Cab app. And in turn, Yellow Cab dispatches the trip to an available taxi cab. Over the past year, For Hire Vehicle Administration has been providing the committee with developments on this partnership. On October 5, we held an ad hoc meeting to receive feedback from permit holders, lease drivers, and dispatch services, many of which are also happen to be today here in this meeting, and other industry stakeholders regarding potential MTS ordinance revisions to enable this partnership to take effect. As an initial start on how we facilitate this partnership, we begin by drafting the following revision to allow taxi cab trips to be booked by a third-party trip provider, which would then be defined as a TNC that books and provide upfront pricing to a prospective passenger and then transfers the trip to an MTS authorized dispatch service organization. For that matter, a third-party trip provider may not also be an MTS authorized dispatch service for the purpose of this definition. So this would be the main revision in order to trigger the other ones to enable this partnership. At the ad hoc meeting that we held on October 5th, we received plenty of very positive feedback of the concerns that the revisions that we were tailoring or that we were proposing were tailored exclusively for Uber and Yellow Cab. So those were concerns that we received because Yellow Cab and Uber are the only ones that proposed that partnership here in the San Diego area. So people were concerned that our revisions were being tailored for those two companies. Under that premise, the concern was that these revisions would limit permit holders and drivers to participate in these TNC taxi cab partnerships to currently one dispatch service, Yellow, based on their dispatch service description. Instead of only accepting the use of maximum rates of fare for the TNC book trips, For Hire Vehicle Administration has identified an alternative approach that would allow an exception to the maximum rates of fare for any prearranged trips that offer upfront pricing through a mobile application or internet website. So the main issue here was the maximum rates of fare. That was the matter at hand, the questions as to what fare method should apply for those types of trips. And that we'll cover more on the alternative method, which has to do with any dispatch service organization that maintains a mobile application or internet website could determine upfront prices for prearranged trips and not being limited to a business partnership with a TNC or being limited to the maximum rates of fare. In other words, out of our 9 current dispatch services that are authorized here in San Diego, out of those 9 that have an application or an internet site, and any passenger that would book a trip through the app or through an internet site would be considered a prearranged trip. And if it's a prearranged trip, then the maximum rates would not apply. The dispatch service, at their sole discretion, in conjunction with their subscribers, would determine what's the most applicable rate. Could it be more? It could be. Could it be less? It could be. Additional freedom for the dispatch service and their subscriber to have control over that compensation. In this alternative approach, the maximum rate of fares, as I mentioned, would not apply to trips generated, would only apply, I should say, to correct myself. In this alternative approach, the maximum rates of fare would only apply, would still apply to the trips that are generated at the curb, at the taxi cab stands, through street hails, or through traditional telephone requests to a dispatch service. In other words, again, as the definition says, any passenger that walks up to a cab, then the driver is subject to provide the maximum rates of fare for that trip. For those trips that are booked through an internet website or a mobile application, it is possible that passengers that book those trips through those modes may be paying more or less than the maximum rate of fare for their trip. This alternative approach could incentivize the taxi cab industry, dispatch services, permit holders, and lease drivers to work together and provide their own trip rates to better compete with TNCs. They would have ultimate freedom again to determine, based on various factors, what is the best rate that they can offer to that passenger in order to gain business and better compete with TNCs. The passengers that book that trip through a mobile app or through a website would have the ability and the option to compare multiple transportation options through a TNC app such as Uber or Lyft, through another taxi cab dispatch app, or to choose which for higher transportation mode may provide the best rate and or quickest trips, giving again passengers multiple options to decide ultimately what type of trip or which dispatch service they wanted to do business with. Passengers will continue, as for consumer protections, passengers will continue to have the option to call a dispatch service organization or go straight up to a taxi cab stand or do a street hail if they want their taxi cab trip to be regulated under the maximum rate of fare structure. Because this is an alternative approach that was conceived through the feedback received on October 5th. We do believe and recommend that and request additional feedback on this alternative approach to enable taxi cabs to leverage technology and compensation methods. On the same matter, to where they can always, any stakeholders can provide our office with their feedback. If requested, we can conduct additional ad hoc hearings, but we do believe, Chair, we want to flush this item further. That way we have clear guidance on how to proceed with the revisions. So the proposed revisions on this item, I invite the committee to read the sections. They're pretty lengthy, but the sections are listed here. Mainly would have to do with the posting of maximum rates of fare in taxi cabs. Currently, all rates of fare have to be posted inside a taxi cab to mitigate any confusion with a passenger that booked a trip through a different fare, that booked a trip through an app or an internet site and received a different upfront price of what they would get from the maximum rates of fare. And to reduce that confusion, revisions there basically would add or request to add verbiage on the inside of the cab that upfront price, that trips booked through an app or a website are not subject to a rate of fare. That would bring clarity to a passenger in the event that they are confused with the disparity of fares. The second section would include language to explicitly allow drivers to refuse any fare that is booked through an app or through the website. That way, and explicitly express that driver, if they refuse to provide service to that fare, will not be subject to MTS penalties. And finally, and perhaps the most important area of discussion, is the other set of revisions that would include exceptions to the maximum rates of fare for those trips that are booked through an app or a website. Additional revisions have to do with dispatch service technology requirements. We also held a couple of ad hoc meetings and received plenty of feedback on these items. In essence, 3 items that stem from the City Council Policy 500-02, 24-hour dispatch that requires dispatch service organizations to receive and respond to service requests or other operational questions 24 hours a day. Due to the decline of trips, we did receive much feedback that after hours, some dispatch services are unable to staff their dispatch services after business hours. A proposed revision to the ordinance would allow a dispatch center to utilize a call center, which is available technology, or to join with other dispatch services to provide 24-hour service. So those are very plausible solutions, and that's what the revisions for the ordinance regarding 24 hours would include. Regarding computerized dispatch systems, the ordinance does not currently define what a computerized dispatch system should be. We conducted a peer agency review and found that not having specific requirements for computerized dispatch has caused in San Diego for the last couple of years for dispatch services to utilize social media apps such as WhatsApp or other phone messaging apps as their primary method for dispatch service trip requests to their subscribers. A proposed revision to this section of the ordinance would define computerized dispatch as a transportation specialized computer system that is designated to automate the flow of information between a dispatch service and a driver at a very minimum, compile information in electronic record trip information, such as the start and end locations of a trip, the route taken, upfront final fare, and any additional information related to a trip. This is an industry standard that has a lot to do with public safety and allowing our agency to expeditiously investigate customer service complaints. And finally, GPS tracking, which is another requirement. The ordinance currently does not explicitly explain the method dispatch services should use to locate vehicles in service using a GPS or similar technology. To ensure the taxi cab is the object being tracked and not the driver, a proposed revision as of now, and this might change based on current feedback that we've received, proposed revisions would require a GPS tracking method installed directly on the vehicle. The city requires that cabs are tracked via GPS while in service, not 24 hours, while in service. So we're focusing on that, and any method of tracking that's acceptable and meets those requirements, MTS is open to incorporate it on these revisions. And finally, pretty straightforward revision on LSVs, which stands for low-speed vehicles. Our ordinance currently restrict the definition of a low-speed vehicle to have 4 wheels on the ground. We're proposing a revision based on a recent application for a 3-wheeled vehicle that meets all other definitions for a low-speed vehicle and also meets the California Department of Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. They are called tuk-tuks. Some people might be familiar with them, but in essence, they're 3-wheel vehicles. They are electric. We would like to permit them, and the proposed revision has to do with removing that 4-wheel requirement since this is a 3-wheel vehicle. And the next steps for these revisions or for this item is that after receiving feedback today on these concepts and these proposed revisions, we will provide a red line track change for Ordinance 11 at the next TAC meeting to be held around February 24th for final approval and subsequent MTS Board Directors approval. We will also review whether any changes to our Board Policy 34, which has to do with for vehicle services and covers the maximum rates of fare, if any changes might be required for that policy also. But that's it, Chair. This is the end of Agenda 5. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Lenny. Do we have public comment on this item?
Yes, we do. It's John Finley from Uber and Taxi.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is John Finley. I manage public policy and communications for Uber in Southern California. We just wanted to say we're very enthusiastic about our partnership that we've agreed to here in Southern California, as well as a number of different taxi partnerships and products we have launching around the world. And I won't take up too much of your time. Just want to say that we appreciate the thoughtful approach to the regulations that are being discussed here in San Diego. And it's something that we really feel is a win-win-win for everybody on this platform. Speaking as a rider of Uber, of taxicabs, of MTS, which I took to get here from my home in Mission Valley, it really helps to allow people to better connect and get in a lot of different ways to get to where you need to go, right? Especially those of us who like to travel with our smartphones now, having a way to access taxicabs via the phone, having a way to get Uber trips and Uber demand referred to taxi drivers is a win for drivers, and it's a win for the city to help people get around to where they need to go. So I'm happy to be here and answer any questions that members of the committee or other folks may have. I'm sitting in the audience, hanging out. So thank you very much, and we really appreciate it.
That concludes public comments.
Okay, we will now take member questions and comments, beginning with Mr. Girma, Taysom, Boyso, and then Mr. Banks. And you can go first, sorry.
So just a quick question for Danny. Thank you for the updates. But I just want to see out of the all 9 radio services, how many radio companies did show interest to join, to have this partnership with Uber? Have you ever received any company interested to have this partnership? I know Yellow is interested, I see, but do you have any other company maybe show or in the process of maybe looking for this partnership? I know we have Flywheel and Curb is also interested to come as a radio service.
Correct,
So
correct.
do you have anyone so far in there any process? Because the reason I'm asking this question is we have a lot of interest on the driver's side. But right now, as you say, it's on the yellow cap and we have other radio services out there and drivers were interested, to make this money and want to know what's the status and I want to get updates on that. Thank you.
Yes, Abel. So as you mentioned, Yellow Cab is the only current dispatch service in San Diego that has announced a partnership with Uber. Flywheel has been recently approved. It has met the requirements to establish themselves as the newest dispatch service in San Diego. I do understand that Flywheel already has this partnership in the Bay Area, and at some point, it's up to them if they want to also participate with the Uber partnership. That's perhaps a question for our Uber rep, but as of now, it's only Yellow Cab.
Okay, question for the Uber rep. So why did you pick yellow? Why not all taxis? Why?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to take that. I think this is where we're starting and this is where the negotiations had begun. And I think we're really excited about working with Yellow Cab. To my knowledge, there are other conversations that are happening already. And this was the first to get approved. So we are continuing to have those and hopefully around the state and around the world, not just in San Diego, but we're able to get additional partnerships going. And predominantly, we were focused on conversations in the LA market as well. And we expanded that out to San Diego and to all of Southern California. So that's something we were excited to do, but the conversation began in LA with the largest fleet provider in LA. And now we're thinking bigger.
Yeah, you guys been working behind doors anyway, before you brought up this agenda. I don't know why. We're talking about this yellow Uber merging it, like taking the whole agenda or our time. So my question is to you, in San Diego, not LA, not New York, any future, all taxi cabs can include it in you. We're not begging to get into, to merge with you, but just, I can't get it.
Yes, sorry, hoping I understand the question correctly. Is there a future for additional taxi partnerships in San Diego? That answer is absolutely.
Other than yellow.
Yes, absolutely. We're looking to expand and looking to continue those conversations with whoever's interested. So these are negotiations that'll continue happening, and we're happy to have them. This is a big priority for us globally, so we're looking to do it everywhere we can.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Taysom? Oh. Mr. Banks, then Mr. Taysom, and then Mr. Waitzer. Thank you.
Mr. Banks, could you please turn your mic on? Thank you.
Talking about 3 wheels, is this a taxi or private 3 wheels?
It would be, it's considered a low-speed vehicle. The potential company is interested to begin operations in the downtown area. However, once permitted, they are able to operate in all the areas or all the cities where MTS has provided a permit. But if you will see it mainly, at least as of now, as where they plan to operate in the downtown area, not as a taxi, as a low-speed vehicle. They don't have a taximeter. They can charge per area, per block, or prearranged. So similar to Fred, you've seen are you familiar with Fred, Alfred? It's the same, but they're golf carts with four wheels. This is a little bit different. The concept is the same, but it's a three-wheeled vehicle.
That be too crowded street because you know the downtown is very busy when you keep on adding that three wheels will be inconvenient for the busy street. You know, airport is in the middle of the city. If you have that three wheels, it's going to be a lot of traffic for unnecessary with those three wheels because they cannot go fast as four wheels.
Well, regardless of the wheels, the number of the wheels, they're limited to 25 miles an hour. So that's a stipulation. And again, the traffic conditions, there are factors that are cannot be accounted for whenever we give a permit, be in a taxi, be in whatever other type of vehicle. So that's something that's, we really, don't account for when we issue a permit, irrespective of what type of vehicle it is.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. All right, Mr. Tayson?
What are you gonna do when one of the cab companies want to come in? Not just yellow cab, just a yellow cab down picture, okay? Let's say Joe Blow was coming here, he's got 3 cabs, and he wants to join your organization. How can you do that? Does he have to put the yellow cab kid? Or can you go directly into the membership without going through the yellow cab?
Sorry, to clarify, you mean to begin having Uber refer trips to their taxi fleet? Yeah, we would have to set that program up with whatever dispatch service or whatever company wants it. And so that's how we began with Yellow Cab, is just with talking with them about bringing taxis onto the platform. And eventually it's a global goal of the company to have as many taxis as want it available on the Uber app. So we would talk with anybody.
You just say you can't do that unless you come in. We have to come to you and say, we want to join your organization. We have to do our radio service and join. I'm talking about with Joe Blow, who's going to 3 cabs. Hey, I want to join this organization. I want to join the organization. And you're telling me you can't do that unless you join the radio service. The whole radio service has to get involved first, correct?
As of right now, I think the answer to that is yes. We would be looking to scale up our capabilities to start doing that more. And I think that will just take us launching this first partnership. We began it in the Bay Area and in New York, and we're monitoring how it's going, and we're quite excited about it. But scaling up our capability will require running it at this scale first.
Do you have any research on this in the other areas that you brought involved?
Yeah, we have a bit. As I said, it hasn't been live for very long, but we have a bit from SFMTA that has done analysis on the program existing in San Francisco, and we have a bit of information and data on New York City as well. San Diego, certainly not a small city, but compared to the Bay Area metro area and New York City, this is kind of our first market that is not of that size, right? So we're excited about San Diego and seeing how San Diego goes. But the longer we do this, the more information and data we'll have.
Mr. Whitson?
Thank you, Chair. And good afternoon, everybody. I have a more pressing question for our chair with regards to taxi cabs used to be categorized in a certain committee that no longer I can find. Do you know what classification we're under, or should I say what committee we're under with the city of San Diego with respect to cabs? Or do we just stand alone on the side now with MTS?
Yeah, I will circle back to you on that. The only space where we can directly deal with taxi cabs, my office is here at the advisory committee. I'll be honest, in the time that I've been on council, I don't think taxi cabs have come up really at all.
Well, when Marty Emerald was last chair here, we had the city had to deal with some of the taxi cab issues. We were under a committee called Safe Neighborhoods and something else.
There's probably public safety in the livable neighborhoods.
They called it like Safe Neighborhoods or something. But anyway, so that
The
you're
public
gonna-
safety, so yeah, and that committee's been split into 2 different committees now, city. So it would depend on the issue that we're discussing. So I'll double check this. taxi cabs broadly, that's not, there's no committee description that includes taxi cabs. Now, there's issues related to taxi cabs, could fall into a variety of different committees.
Okay, so we can fall into various classifications, or should I say committees, not classifications?
Yeah,
Okay, the reason I ask is back when the industry was opened up in 2015 to open up open entry, there was a consensus between on the council that they would be reviewing the taxi cab progress and where it was headed. I think we pretty much have passed almost, we're going into a 10-year, I know it's not 10 years yet, but we're going to be headed in that direction. And I'm bringing this up because we brought it to one of our committees or subcommittee meetings, that we have to revisit this issue.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the information that we're governed by as far as regulations have and need modification for today's times. Because some of the things we're reviewing, which is GPS, which has always been on there since it was imposed on us when we went into open entry, reinforced, I should say. And then the other items that stood on there were never modified. I think the industry needs to weigh in on how do we go about reviewing and modifying some of our regulatory requirements, because as we're aware, we have some companies that were scooters, bicycles, e-bikes and all that were in our city and no longer here as a result of regulations, about theft, regulatory issues, and too many companies at one time. And my concern is as an industry that's in flux, we have a lot of challenges before us. And one of them that I have stated as a dispatch service call center, that some of the challenges are cost. I mean, we're talking about technology. People are asking, how do you engage with Uber? Well, technology is part of it. If you have the technology, you can engage tablets, phones, whatever you need to engage with that, whatever agreement you make. But some of the other things that we are governed by and are going to be enforced still need to be engaged, whether the city's willing to revisit that or whether we do that with MTS. If that's where the forum is, because I keep hearing reference to council policy, which is the city of San Diego. So it seems like the city of San Diego has to weigh in before MTS does. MTS is just the contracted agency that's regulating the industry, my understanding, correct?
I think there's multiple things that are probably happening. I think, and when I will go to you as well. From what I'm hearing, there are city policies that impact the taxi industry, obviously. And there's MTS policies that impact the taxi industry. So part of what's supposed to come from these conversations, obviously, is the direct feedback to MTS staff about which policies and practices are impacting you all and in which ways. And so you all can help shape that. If there are impacts that you all are feeling that are not related to MTS policy, that's certainly something we want to know so we can bring that back to the city. The most efficient way for doing that is probably to have, it could either be a working group, we can docket an item here at this committee for folks to name some of the things that you all think are impacting at the city level, and then again we bring that back to the city so we can work on it. But it's difficult to do that kind of in the abstract, because at any given time it could be one, it could be the city, it could be MTS, or it could be both. So I think it really does depend on the specifics.
Well, you've explained some of it, but still, you're seeing that our industry is quite complex as to where we turn to get things done. And even licensing, we have to go to several places. So the challenges are many, and they continue to be, even though we've talked about in the past leveling the playing field. And no offense to Uber, and the young man that's here articulating very well the information. He does it with pleasure. So good to see a smile and upbeat about the intentions. It's a good thing. But my concern is we're still working on something that still hasn't been ironed out. And I think we have to have that consensus with the city of San Diego, not only MTS. MTS has been working with us very well to try to, help us with our survival mode that we're still in with regards to finances, because a lot of the industry was impacted and we still continue to be. So having said that, I think it's important to say we need to still have like a moratorium until the city reacts to some of the requests that we have. Because we've been going back and forth, at least I have, with Lenny and some people in city as to what direction we head to, because it is cumbersome to budget, to calendar it. Being yourself the president of the council, you have full calendar, and where do we go in that calendar? And then how do we come back? And then how do we go here? It's time consuming. So if we can streamline it here, have that conversation where we want to go, and have a moratorium and not enforce certain things, that we iron them out, because drivers are asking on this board, some of the drivers that are making comments, they're making comments about technology. And yet they're saying, I don't want to invest in this because I don't have the means. So we have some conflicts of how can we get to our destination with all these requirements, yet have the economics to do it. It's rather a high bar to get to. So I think our industry still needs, because I think Uber was afforded the opportunity to engage their product. And a lot of things were dropped from requiring them to have regulatory requirements while they ironed out their kinks. So I think we were impacted severely, not only the city and the airport, and we're still trying to, how should I say, recover. Right. And yet we have benchmarks that are coming for January that are going to be enforced. So we're still working out some of our issues, and they're not easy issues because a lot of it is finances.
Right. So want to make sure we keep this relatively focused on.
Well, I'm putting it out there so we can,
Because even as you say this, though, I think there's another layer that comes in, which is we're talking about an industry that's not regulated by the city or MTS, it's regulated at the state level. And so there adds another layer of complexity, right? Because it's not as if I can't level the playing field of the city by applying the same rules to Uber, since I don't apply most of the rules that Uber operates under, right? Most of those come from the state. So to me, understanding what the goals are of the industry, and then identifying what barriers there are, and which of those barriers exist as a result of MTS policy, which of them result from city policy, that allows us to address some here, some at the city, and then the reality is there will likely be many more that exist outside both jurisdictions. And we can include that in our legislative agenda. We can kind of lobby and fight. But I don't also want to. I don't want to pretend like it will be simple to. And I don't think that you're suggesting it will be either. It's not lost on me or my office at all in terms of the challenges that the industry is facing. My district, District 9, I know that a lot of folks in my district do this for a living and keep a roof over their head in my district as a result of driving a taxi. And so I want there to be a real opportunity to do that and not just survive, but to thrive. So just, again, know that it's on my radar. The hope is that from these conversations, we can glean enough to take action here. And then if it does, the conversation does lead us to a point where it looks like there's a city policy that's acting as a huge barrier to you all, we want to know that, and then we can try to address that accordingly. Mr. Zichi?
Well, to summarize, just because all I was trying to state is, if January is coming and we're going to be enforcement's going to come on that we at least look at the possibility of looking at a moratorium while we solve the problems that get there. There's been some options.
Do you want the moratorium where in the city?
Well,
MTS?
MTS can do it. They have the blessings from the city. They can do it. Because we still have to work out some of our issues. How do we work at some of these? Lenny has mentioned some options. But you still have to form the alliances.
I'm going to be honest, with just being totally transparent, the idea of a moratorium on almost any policy between now and January seems extremely unlikely. That's just for practical purposes. Now, again, if there are conversations that we have here and there's a consensus reached that is something that's important, then we can have a more in-depth conversation about what that would look like, procedures involved, and the timing of that procedure. But in full transparency, it's hard for me to imagine almost any, a moratorium on almost any city policy happening between now and January of next year.
Well, but you have,
Joyce, I want to make sure we've got.
right,
other
but
folks.
you have a foundation already set, that it's a work in progress. So if we can work with that, that's an understanding, we can move forward. But I'm just making it clear that them answers weren't given yet because there was nowhere to go.
Got it. Mr. Zichi?
Yeah, I think Tony's got a good point in terms of like, he knows you can't level the playing field from the Uber side, but he's saying we got to level the playing field from our industry side. And then the question is, if Uber is regulated at the state level and we operate at the local level, how do we change to cope with the changes, many changes that have gone on in the industry since 2015? So I think that's the first thing, is to understand that we need to figure a way to lift ourselves up and be relevant and competitive in the 21st century. So I think that's really important. And that's a message to get back to the city, is everybody just sort of sits on it. Lenny does what he does. He goes to legal counsel about what's this and that. But the issues are transformative in terms of what Tony's saying. I would suggest the fact that you don't think we can have a moratorium, that I think we should have another ad hoc meeting that just deals with putting stuff on the table and talking about what can the city do or what can the county do to, and sort of communicate the realities of what people are facing and put it on the table. And frankly, to me, the city holds the cards, because the city agrees to have MTS be the regulatory agency, but it's really the city's the big dog. Just like every city in the county can choose to be in or not be an MTS. So it's really the cities that determine what happens, and they say, MTS, these are our ordinances, put them into action, do what you got to do. So I think it's really appropriate to start with an ad hoc meeting here, but really be thinking about what is the city's responsibility, or what are we asking of the city, or what are we putting on the table with the city? So I have to leave, but I'm really glad that Tony brought that up, and I think we need to pursue it.
Yeah, so what I think makes sense, it kind of bleeds into one of our later agenda items. Before we do an ad hoc committee, I think what would make even more sense is to agendize a conversation about this at a future meeting, where we can hone in on policies at the city that are inhibiting your ability as an industry to thrive, or seem to be putting you at a major disadvantage in comparison to Uber. That's something we can totally do. And you all, as always, are able to work together amongst yourselves in compliance with the Brown Act, right? Looking at Samantha as I say that to make sure that we're all in compliance. To have conversations ahead of time, so that when we get here, we have the most efficient and effective conversations possible. Now, if it's possible that what could come from the conversation that we have here is the development of an ad hoc committee or a working group to kind of dive into the issues more. But what I think we should do, though, is set aside dedicated time for this issue here first, because Mr. Wesa, to your point, I understand that the power exists in the city, but the people who are impacted are here. And so I want to make sure that we, as with any policy that I try to drive at the city, I want to make sure that we're talking directly with the most impacted people. So that's the commitment for me, is to find a time on a future agenda for us to really dive in there, and then we can figure out a good path forward.
This three-wheel electric vehicle, I've been going to the board meetings since we came into MTDB, now MTS, in '89. When the three-wheel vehicles were first going, Councilman, then Supervisor Roberts, commented during an exec board meeting and during the board meeting that he would not go for them going up to Hillcrest from downtown. They're not strong enough, and he was concerned about accidents. The way Fifth Ave has been changed, and even First Ave at this point, that really is a good question. And the other issue was on Harbor Drive. They were not supposed to, the harbor cops didn't want them there, no less as DPD. So it's something that the city council needs to have a discussion on from previous times, if you go back through the previous rounds with the three vehicles.
So I'll I can't speak for the whole city, obviously. I'll just say personally, I'm super excited about this possibility. I like that San Diego would be on the forefront in terms of expanding a clean transportation option. I ride a bike up Fifth. There's been significant improvements made to Fifth. I ride an e-bike up Fifth. It handles that no problem. The motor on the tuk-tuk, I'm sure, is significantly more powerful than my bike. I think the technology is there. I think it's actually a really exciting opportunity for San Diego. And it actually, from conversations I had, the conversation we had with Lenny earlier, I think there's a lot of potential here, and would want to. I'm interested in seeing it explored, and I'd be surprised if there was major pushback from most of the city.
Yeah, the issue on Harbor Drive was the 25 miles, and I know the same arguments were going on about the bicycles in those days also. Fifth Ave, it's the hill on top of it, and the
Yeah.
guys do drive a little erratically. First Avenue is even worse these days, so. Anyway, that's that.
Mr. Majid, I think you had.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to Tony's comments. Most of the requirements that Mr. Fuel outlined, such as GPS and whatnot, they come directly from policy 500-2, which is from the city of San Diego. And to my understanding, and I think the legal counsel can clarify this, MTS has no authority whatsoever to change those or amend those, so that responsibility falls on the city of San Diego. What Tony said is absolutely correct. At one point, we belonged to Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee. At this point, we don't even know which committee actually oversees taxi cabs. So if you can find out and let us know, so at least we have a starting point with the city, because most of these requirements came directly from 500-2, and MTS, there's nothing they can do about it. So we would have to start with the city to amend those requirements.
So that's easier because if we're talking like if we narrow it to a specific issue, a lot easier for us to identify the committee and what the process would look like, right? So in the abstract, the taxi industry, that's not listed under the jurisdiction of any specific committee. Now there are components of or aspects of the work of this industry that would fall under various different, that could fall under various different committees' jurisdictions. So that specific policy is something that we can circle back with Lenny and have a little more conversation about what that might look like to address. But again, I think big picture, right? What I heard Tony saying was that there's a multitude of city policies that impact this industry. That's what I heard Peter say as well. So we can do both things, right? We can hone in on one specific policy, but there also can be a more comprehensive look at what city policies are impacting the industry in a negative way. So the more narrow one is something that can happen sooner. The broader look is something that needs to wait for a different meeting.
Well, in my opinion, the narrow one is 500-2, so.
Got it. Any additional questions or comments about this item? Yeah. Well, specific to Ordinance 11. All right. Thank you, Lenny. Sure. Why not? Yeah.
Just wanted to thank you all for all your comments and also add that there's another TNC company that some of you may have on your phones. Does not here, but I'm here and happy to hear from you all anytime and answer any additional questions. Thank you.
So actually, can I ask, I got a question. So
You sure can.
I think what I heard is it's kind of on each individual taxi company to seek you all out and try to figure out how to make it work. I get that, but also that's a lot to do for a small business. And so what I think would be appreciated, at least from my perspective, is if Uber were to set something up, it would make it easier for multiple parties to come at one time and find out, what they need to know and what it would look like, perhaps a tutorial or a workshop or something along those lines. I think asking each of the individual companies in town to just kind of figure it out, that at best seems challenging, at worst seems like kind of a way of telling folks to, thanks, but we're not really interested.
Can I interrupt you? You're on a good point. Simplify it. In San Francisco, you guys were directly dealing with cabs. They had their own phone, dealing with Uber, and there are other systems for their own dispatch. So they were able to accomplish that in San Francisco, where the driver sought out Uber and became an Uber member just with a cell phone. He had the technology on it. That's the only place I know where they were doing it, in San Francisco. Can't you do that here in San Diego?
Possibly. I don't actually know the answer to that right now. I think that is very good feedback for us to take and think about. And each of these programs that have launched was negotiated on their own, right? And so they were built from scratch, talking with regulators and talking with cab companies as well. And so that's something that I think we can start doing. And knowing that the interest is there to scale it up, to be quite frank with you, we had no idea whether the interest would be there. And so hearing that it is a very, very good thing. And that's something that we're excited to begin doing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move to agenda item number 6. Lenny?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is our for hire vehicle operations update. Again, I invite the membership to log into our website for more detailed information. In essence, communicate to the industry that email remains the primary method of communication for all purposes. We recommend for all our permit holders to check their spam and junk folders and set their email filters to accept our emails. As we found that many times our email blasts with general information, or most importantly, the invoices, and probably end up going to those junk folders. And for that matter, we do require all permit holders to notify us of any change in their address, phone number, or email information, as is required by ordinance, by the way. Also, we remain on an appointment-only operation for all calls. They are returned by the next business day. Having to do with the upcoming renewal period, which is between January 2nd and March 24, we will be collecting regulatory fee payments, vehicle inspection forms, excuse me, and annual statements at the airport holding lot, which is the area where the majority of our taxi cabs currently operate. Our inspectors also collect payments in these forms in the San Isidro, Otay Mesa, and CBX area. And this is convenient for our drivers. That way it avoids them having to drive to our offices. And like I said, we collect those documents there, the payments, we provide them with a receipt. We'll continue to do that for this year. Also, the payments and vehicle inspections, the same forms, may also be dropped at our red box. Some of you might have seen it in our main lobby. It's a distinctive fire red box mailbox that allows permit holders to just do a quick stop and drop payments forms. We collect it, we empty it every day. Or they can also keep mailing them to traditional U.S. postage mail to our address. To avoid the $100 late fee, we must receive the payments by the close of business day of March 4th, 2024. Unfortunately, no cash or credit cards are accepted. We hope that changes next year. So we will only continue to accept personal cashier checks or money orders. We are also excited to report to the committee that as of November 12th, the city of Oceanside was added to the list of the cities that we regulate. So now all of our taxi cab permit holders in non-emergency medical companies are able to operate in the city of Oceanside legally through our permit. Vice versa, those companies that are in transition to gain our permit and that are domiciled in Oceanside, they can also come down and conduct business in the city of San Diego. If they want to do business at the airport, then they need to reach out to Mr. Anderson. That's a separate permit. But that is the latest addition to our list. We are progressing in negotiations with other cities in North County, cities like Encinitas and Carlsbad, and all the remaining cities to, at some point, if they do decide to join our list of cities, then we will gain countywide jurisdiction. Also, as I mentioned, all currently permitted vehicles may now conduct business in the city of Oceanside. They have their distinct events. So now drivers may choose to drive up there. It's quite a drive, but now they're able to with no additional permit requirements. This is the number of active against surrender permits. As you can see, there's quite some change. We are gaining more permits by the month. For taxi cabs, there are now 773. That's great progress compared to COVID, to where at the lowest point we were down to a little bit over 500. We have also seen gains in non-emergency medical transportation. That's an emerging industry, and it's reflected here at the permit count. However, there are still some, 14, almost 15% of taxi cabs that remained under voluntary surrender for different reasons. Permit holders might be abroad for trip, on a trip, on vacation, different factors. However, they are still active in our database, but they are not working. They can come back to work anytime, so long as they reach out to our office free of charge. This table covers our regulatory inspectors' field enforcement. Again, I invite the committee to read it at their own discretion and time at the website, but we do keep track on contacts for every city. Our enforcement approach is to warn and educate drivers. However, there are times that they do require a citation to be issued. Also, breakdown on the type of vehicle that our field enforcement issues either warnings or citations, the type of issue warnings, and very important, our customer feedback case comparison from the past quarter to this quarter, and we've seen an increase on fare refusals, mostly from the airport, but we do see also a stable number of compliments, which we are really proud to receive, in which case we reach out to that company, we reach out to that driver, and on behalf of the passenger and of MTS, we commend them from their service. But it's also important to keep track for permit holders and lease drivers, and most of them being owner operators, to remind them is to provide good service. We're ambassadors for the city, and we do keep track of each complaint, which our enforcement team investigates. And finally, the comparison of the San Diego airport taxi cab trips. Mr. Anderson, thank you for your department for providing us this data on a monthly basis. And as we can see, TNCs continue to dominate the marketplace out of the airport in terms of pickups in comparison to the taxi cabs. With small variations, I believe, come around winter. Overall trips go down, but September saw very, very much high activity with TNC trips, topping over 200,000 trips for the month of September. That concludes agenda number 6, Chair. Any questions?
Thank you, Lenny. Any public comment on this item?
No public comments.
All right. Any committee member questions or comments?
Thank you.
I know we talked about this issue in the past. Again, it's almost a year. The rates of fare going up we're getting a lot of negative comments from our customers, especially customers who go far away from the airport. And we had this discussion in the past, but I know coming March or February, we're gonna have another rates of change amendments. So I would like to know if something can be done. I'm gonna ask this thing in advance because it's getting out of control for most of us. You take someone from point A, point B. If this guy goes far away, then it's gonna be more expensive.
Hey,
But that's not the reality.
let's have
David.
folks go one at a time, please.
Yeah, it's not the reality. I'm just talking about reality right now. You could say, I know this is a proposed solution, you know. I know UTW and other companies were saying the drivers have power to change their fares, but that's not the reality. Everyone is charging the maximum rates of fare. Yellow Cab is the only one that's at the airport now charging less than the higher rates of fare. And customers are suffering, and we are also getting negative comments from the passengers, and it looks like we are avoiding this issue. We for sure has to come back for discussion, and something has to be done. Otherwise, you know, business as usual. We're not gonna discuss next year. Maybe, I don't know if you're gonna hike the price again. I don't know which direction we're gonna go to. So I'm asking Lenny, please, let's discuss about this issue. You know, right now, most drivers are not happy, including myself. You know, so let's make some changes. I'm asking this board reconsider this issue and look deeply and take some time even to form a small group and discuss what can be done, because the customers really giving us a negative comment. Take it to yourself. You request for Uber at the airport, and that Uber driver doesn't want to show up because he doesn't want to drive 45 an hour away, drives from the airport. So your next option is the next taxi in line. Then you don't know how much that taxi driver gonna cost because they're expensive. And then the customer will pay the price for it. It looks like this issue has to be discussed again and again, but we are still keep avoiding it. So I'm asking again, please, let's look into this issue.
I'm not, yeah, because this has come up a number of times. From my perspective, it doesn't feel like we're avoiding it. I feel like when the conversations happened here, there's a difference of opinion in terms of what should be done. We've heard you say that you feel like the maximum rate should be reduced. Most of the folks around the dais seem to think that the solution is to just charge less to the customer on an individual basis or set lower rates. I think the one thing I can say that I think I'm hearing you say that isn't necessarily being recognized as often as it could be is that when the rates are high, people avoid taxis in general. And so I think that there might be something to discuss there about to what extent the taxi industry's reputation as of having high rates could impact all of your ability to attract customers. However, I don't think it's being, the whole topic's being avoided. That's because we've had the conversation multiple times at this point.
The reason I'm saying that's almost a year.
Yeah, but that's, I just also want to,
No change.
right, but that doesn't mean that, so one person not getting what they want in terms of change is different, is not the same as the topic being avoided. I want to make sure we recognize that because we've had the conversation multiple times. We're not ignoring it. I just have not seen people be persuaded that we should go in the direction that you want them to. So again, happy to try to figure out a different way to have the conversation. Thus far, the way it's been approached is not through avoidance, but there's just disagreement. And those aren't the same things. I do want to make sure we have an opportunity to go to a few other folks. I think I saw Mr. Kerma hit the lights, and then Mr. Majid, and then Mr. Tassim. Mr. Tate, please.
Thank you. The issue is, when shuttle drivers pick up their customers or other ride-share companies, they have their own price. No one have control over their price. They can call any price. Taxi have their limit. So we were discussing with different drivers. They want flat rate from airport to downtown or Loma or Old Town, 25 bucks per day. Waiting time today to get into the airport to get dispatched is 6 hours. 6 hours. So imagine that. Also imagine that driver might get $15, $20. It's a lot. Maybe bad day, good day. So Mr. Ablo said, let's try flat rate and then lower the meter. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Majid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That chart really does speak volumes. And one of the things that I can suggest to at least solve this issue to a certain extent, this problem started when we amended the ordinance where we allowed permit holders to select their rates of fare. So essentially, we took that authority out of the hands of radio services and passed it out to everybody. An immediate solution might be where Lenny's making the ordinance revisions to change that back to radio services. You're taking that control out of the hands of 640 people and bringing it under the control of only 9 radio services. Because I do remember when we had that authority as radio services to select our own rates of fare, and the permit holders individually did not have that. It was manageable, it was under control. If there's a different mechanism out there that we can come up with that will solve this problem immediately, I would welcome it, but in the short term, I think that would be a good solution where, the 9 radio services, they can sit down and come up with a uniform rate or whatever rate they want that's reasonable. By any stretch of imagination, what you guys are charging at the airport, it's not reasonable. And nowhere in the country, as far as my knowledge, any airport is charging these rates. And if you all remember, I predicted these numbers and I told you guys what's going to happen. For the short term, I think that would be an immediate solution for the problem.
Mr. Tazen?
I think in this case here, I'm gonna go back to your comment and your comment. Gentlemen, you sit at the airport, when a customer comes to you and says, how much is it to Carlsbad? You say, what's the meter? The meter is not the dictator. You're the dictator of the car. You're the one who owns the car. You're the one who does control. The meter is a guide, not the Bible. I keep telling you this for the last 2 years. You guys are thinking this is your bread and butter. No, it's not. Your bread and butter is those numbers up on that board. I've been looking at those numbers for 3 years now, and they have not changed. 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people go with the taxi cabs. Over 200,000 go into Ubers and Lyfts. Why? Because they're cheaper. Because you refuse to do a Carlsbad run for $50 or to the border for 30 or for 40. If you do that, the numbers will start changing. You don't do that. You want to have the maximum dollar amount on that meter so that customer will pay you. That's not going to happen because you're not going to get those numbers to go up and the airport's going to go, we don't care.
Abel? One at a time. Yep.
Right.
Abel? Yep.
It's fine. He's fine. He can crowd him wherever he wants. He started this mess by opening up the numbers. The numbers are right there. The numbers don't lie. You want to know why it takes 6 hours? There's your number. There's your answer right there. Drop the price. Turn your meters backwards. You can drop it down. You don't have to go to the maximum. You can go $3 a mile or $2 a mile. It takes 5 minutes to do it. That's it. Pure and simple.
Mr. Banks?
I believe it's up to each individual driver. If somebody say they go for a fare, you just ask for the address. You calculate it. You tell them how much it is. It is up to you. You can give them a discount. They will go with you. But if you just say on the meter, they don't know what you're talking about. But give them a discount, but you cannot add more, or you can charge them less. If you start doing that, that's okay. But if you just keep on saying on the meter, because the meter says we're going to be having some problem. But the people who come in here for business, they don't care about the amount where they go because the company pays for it. But those people who want to, that regular using, they want a discount, you give them a discount. But don't just say on the meter. You calculate by the rate, then you say, okay, it will be about 120. Then, okay, I can give you a discount, $100 or $80. They say, let's go. But if you say by the meter, they don't know what you're talking about. I think we can help ourselves by doing it that way rather than just leave it open for the customer to, any amount in the meter.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Tony, EJ?
I'm just going to reinforce, thank you for letting me the opportunity. Mr. Majid's comments that if you guys want to move forward somewhere with something, let's just calendar a meeting. The industry used to have meetings by association and invited people. Yeah, we no longer have them resources to keep forming them associations and bonds, but the forum that's here can have subcommittee meetings and make recommendations rather than having this exchange, and that we can be more forthgiving as far as developing something from that conversation. Isolate the conversations or the subcommittees to a certain topic and just have that conversation. But then that means you have to go out there and share that information because we have limited space who can participate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, I see no more questions or comments on this agenda item. Lenny?
Topic to the next Tax Advisory Committee meeting sometime in February will be announcing the calculated 2024 rates of fare, the revisions to the ordinance number 11, TNC Taxicab partnership, the upfront pricing concept for pre-arranged trips and dispatch service requirements and LSVs that we covered in agenda number 5. And to answer Mr. Seifu's concern, we will we will present on a flat rate fare for airport originated trips and also the traditional taxicab for hire vehicle administration update. I do want to clarify, we're looking at two different subjects here. The maximum rate of fare, which are calculated based on the consumer price index, and the possibility of implementing and developing a flat rate for the airport originated trips. So those are two different issues that we will cover on the next February meeting. We do strive to provide the committee with the most accurate information instead of just presenting the concept first. So we did conduct an agency review with many airports in the United States to see what type of flat fares they have, either by distance, by area. That way the committee at some point and the drivers can make an educated recommendation for us to keep considering. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you, Lenny. Were you, Lenny, were you finished or did you?
Yeah, and those would be the proposed topics. And like always, Chair, our office is open for feedback on any other items that we can discuss that are important to include in the agenda. But for now, we believe these are the present topics to follow up.
Mr. Germer, before we go to you, we'll see if there's any public comment.
There's no public comment.
All right, Mr. Germer, and then Tony.
Yeah, when we compare with other different cities, what is flat rate, don't forget the living cost in San Diego and the gas prices too. So different cities has different living cost of living. You say you're gonna see what other cities doing, other airports do, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And in terms of how they implement their flat rates, in terms of how much would that be, what those rates might be, then I can tell you that I will already receive proposals for a flat rate of $150 out of the airport. So that shows the spectrum of opinions and suggestions of what a flat rate might be. Obviously, that's not realistic. But when we board this topic, then we can decide what factors to consider in the flat rate.
Thank you, Lenny. Tony?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you can get back with Lenny with information as to where we fall as far as what committee,
So
that would be good to know.
I think the answer. is
And it's
probably-
just on the council policy 500,
Yeah, so,
the direction.
yeah, so what we will do is we will agendize a conversation about city policies that impact the industry. What I'm going to do with Lenny and Samantha is we'll have a kind of a more specific conversation about that so that there can be a presentation associated with it. That question will likely be answered in that. I also think that would be probably too narrow of a conversation as well. I want to start from a place that gives us enough breadth that it will likely lead not to just the one action, but the various actions that we would either need to take to the city, state level, or wherever it may be. So I don't know if we'll have time on the next agenda for that. I don't know that we won't. I just want to make sure that I'm being transparent, like deal with the most pressing issues that we have in front of us. I've already messaged Julio. We're going to take a look at it. What I don't want you to expect, though, is that there will necessarily be a clean answer to exactly where the taxi industry lies. This is what, from having watched the efforts that took, that you all took, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and have taken you many years to move forward at the city. The issue of taxi cabs, if I'm being totally honest, is not the same level of relevance at the city now as it was then. That's partially because a big fight was had and was won. It's partially because of how ubiquitous Uber and Lyft have become. So there's a variety of reasons for that. I just want to be honest that, at the city, very rarely does this come up. There's also SANDAG and the policies that are passed there, the funding that is put forward, and the ways in which that can positively or negatively impact the taxi industry as well. So anyway, that is all to say that over the course of the next year, we can dive into the city specifically, but I think what we're also hearing is this committee shouldn't lose sight of the various ways that other jurisdictions impact the industry and what this committee can do through MTS, as a committee and through MTS to address some of those issues.
So does that mean you'll be back on February or you?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah. It
Thank
means
you.
we will talk about it before then. I don't want to commit to something without knowing what else we need to get done in February.
All right. Well, thank you for
Yep.
your comments.
All right. See no additional comments on item 8. All right. Yeah, good.
Thank you for this work.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That's my apologies. So that was agenda item 7. We'll go to agenda item number 8, which is committee member communications and other business. If we have any committee members who would like to provide a brief comment on any taxi cab related item that was not on the agenda, we'll begin with Mr. Anderson.
Just thank you for your work on these topics. A lot of it is airport related. And I just had a comment as far as, were you looking at the fare, single rate for originating fares, or are you looking at destinations or zones, or is that part of the whole conversation?
That's part of the whole conversation, Mike. That way we can, working with you, of course, right? And thank you for collaborating with us constantly. And of course, on this matter, you're the primary stakeholder. So we will provide the committee with the different types of fares, if they're based by zone, if they're based by distance, primary destinations, and basically provide drivers with a broad picture of what this would look like. We need to develop and if this does go forward with an optimal solution. So that's what our presentation will consist, just opening up the conversations and then figure out how we can further develop this with the primary goal of gaining marketplace, right? I think this is the time to mention it, right? Not for necessarily maximum compensation, but to, as most committee members have stated, to try to, get more market share to the taxi cab.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to possibly deal with the brand issue, pricing issues, the fare refusal. So I'm
Yes.
looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mike.
Tony?
I just wanted to share something with the committee here that insurance is again we're gonna be going through a renewal process, and we're gonna be shocked with the pricing that's gonna come out there. Wheelchair vans are being penalized with insurance. It's the difference between a non-emergency vehicle and a wheelchair vehicle is $2,000 from what I see. I contacted an insurance company because I needed insurance for one of the wheelchair vans on a separate name. And they surprised me with that amount, that it's a significantly different pricing. And they're they're targeting, I guess because it's a wheelchair accessible vehicle, they're charging a different rate. So that's a prohibitive feature that comes into play when you're trying to get a wheelchair vehicle. So I am rather concerned about that and also what's coming ahead as far as insurance, not only for taxi cabs, but your personal vehicles, housing and all that, rates are going up. So we have to have that conversation and help people out what we can do as an industry to safeguard our product as far as minimizing losses out there, because our industry gets hit very hard. Just thought I'd share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
I'm gonna take this back on Uber, Lyft, and taxi. At the very beginning, it became a war between the different groups. Cabs lost a lot of money over it. Times went on. I have had some of the big bosses years back take cab rides with me. They'd sneak in the back. They'd converse as to their backgrounds. I know the backgrounds. I'm sitting there driving wherever we're going, saying, gee, these are nice guys. When they go to pay, I look at them and go, oh, you look like the running this one and running that one. We are at a level here with the wars going on overseas and some of our political slamming right now, that if we could encourage, because we have an international group, all of our guys and gals to go ahead and try to calm things down the way this meeting went, we would be in a much better shape globally. Just take a look at the enthusiasm from our Uber guy and the discussions that came from this side and some of the comments over the rates and what have you. This is where we are. It's an economic situation. It's a family situation, and providing transportation is part of just basic everyday life. So let's see if we can't try to take this encouragement and take it out into the field and help out wherever we're active in trying to calm things down, because right now it's a mess out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
This three wheels driver, are they going to be driving on the same road, four wheels? Because you can have somewhere to go. You have somebody with 25 miles per hour to go. So I think before it's too late, you guys need to stop that. Don't let them start. Three-wheel drive, are they going to be going to bicycle lane or on the road?
They need to follow all traffic guidelines for the vehicle code, just like any other motor vehicle or electric vehicle. So I would assume that they wouldn't be going on the bicycle because they're not bicycles.
If they are 25 miles per hour and 35 miles per hour school or whatever they're going, 25 would be more, you're going to be having more traffic, more traffic. So I think before they approve it, we have to put that in consideration of busy San Diego. Before that.
Our ordinance require all vehicles to follow the California Vehicle Code, posted speed limits, curb signs, so they have to follow the rules of the road.
Yeah, if they are 25 miles per hour, but the one that want to have a speed for 35 miles per hour, that it will slow them down. 25 miles per hour.
I want to make sure, because that was on the agenda, I want to make sure that we don't go too far down into too much more detail on something we've already discussed and already been on the agenda, just to make sure that we're staying within the rules of how we hold our meetings.
Yeah, before they approve it, just tell them what is going to be going on. You're going to have some accident and inconvenience of the speeding.
Understood. Are there any additional questions or comments or communications from any members? All right, seeing none, we will, our next meeting will be TBD, to be determined, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.